Welcome MCARBO Brotherhood. I'm Vlad, one of the design engineers here at MCARBO. We have another product for the Ruger platforms, and today I have the Ruger MAX-9. Ruger did a great job with the MAX-9, but we found some areas where it fell short, and one of them was the trigger. This thing is all over the place, sloppy. One of the main points here is that the trigger reach, whenever you go to reach inside of here, it's so far forward in the curve. I'm getting stabbed by this guy here in the blade as I go to pull this. So this can just be made so much better. Seeing that pre-travel, all of that take up here. A lot of this can be corrected. The over travel looks great, so we're not actually going to implement an over travel set screw here. And so during our design of the trigger, we realized that trigger pull was really making us pull our shots down. And so with that heavy factory trigger pull at 5 to 5.5 pounds, we really wanted to make that smoother and bring it down and get that higher accuracy. So today is going to be the first time where we release actually the trigger and trigger spring kit at the same time. We're introducing here the MCARBO short stroke flat trigger. It is precision CNC machined out of billet aluminum, fully machined here in-house in the States. The trigger and safety blade is made out of aluminum. I know that may seem obvious, but we've seen options out there where the safety blade is made out of plastic. We know you guys are using this for your EDC firearm, even if it's not an EDC firearm, I still want to use plastic inside my trigger. So here it is, fully billet, fully machined. The trigger also incorporates short stroke capabilities with the pre-travel set screw. It can reduce up to 60% of your pre-travel without eliminating any of the factory safeties. We also incorporated a bottom lip here for your finger placement, and so you can get that consistent placement there and know exactly where your finger is on the trigger to get that maximum leverage and to smoothen out and reduce that trigger pull. Along with the trigger, we are also releasing the trigger spring kit for the Ruger MAX-9 to offer a 25% reduction in trigger pull weight. The spring kit also comes with an assembly tool for the seal spring, just to make that process that much easier. So let's jump to the tabletop to get both of these products installed. Before we take a closer look at the trigger, let's clear this firearm. Check the chamber, bolt face, magwell. This firearm's clear. Taking a close look at the factory trigger right off the bat, you can see that side-to-side wobble. You can actually twist this trigger. So the tolerances there are definitely not held tight. It is a metal trigger, but it seems like just not dialed in here. And then now looking at the curve, you see the safety blade, it just sticks out. When I go to grab the trigger, you see there, it like pokes my finger as I'm coming in. Especially if you're trying to get maximum leverage here and pull towards the bottom, you're just getting pulled. And then another flaw we notice with the factory trigger is how far forward it is. As you can see here inside of the trigger guard, I have to shove my finger all the way up front just to be able to get my finger on the trigger. So your margin of error to get it in there in a high stress situation, you have to really throw my finger to the front to be able to get that finger on the trigger. So those are a few disadvantages to the factory Ruger trigger that we'll be solving with the MCARBO enhanced trigger. So before we start the install, let's take a factory trigger pull test. 5 pounds, 10 ounces. 5 pounds, 14 ounces. 5 pounds, 2 ounces. 5 pounds, 3 ounces. 5 pounds, 12 ounces. So for a trigger pull average, we got 5 pounds and 8 ounces. So that puts it right at 5.5 pounds trigger pull weight, which is what is advertised from Ruger. And even as I was doing this trigger pull test, it was even hard to get my trigger pull gauge in here because of how tight of a space that is here. So imagine your finger trying to get inside of there. The tools needed for install is a Dremel or any rotary tool. MCARBO firearm and feed ramp polishing kit comes with gloves, microfiber cloth, polishing bits, and Flitz metal gun polish. Blue 242 Loctite, MCARBO gunsmith shank tool, 1/16, 3/32, and 1/8 inch punch, MCARBO gunsmith bench block, brass and nylon tip hammer, and iPro. To begin the disassembly of the firearm, there is a little side tab here to get to the takedown pin. So I'm going to use my shank tool here, push it down. And then you can see you have to rack the slide back just a little bit to align the hole with the slide. So I'm going to be using my left arm here. Move it back. And then go to the back side and use my 1/16 inch punch. And there's a little cutout here in the frame. And so I need to simultaneously do that while this is lined up with the slide. As you push it, it'll come out. Now you can release the slide. Make sure your firearm is pointed in a safe direction and pull the trigger. I like to use old ammunition crates, keep my small components from getting lost. Set the frame aside, we're going to start with the slide. To remove the back plate, you may need to move the striker forward so you can compress the safety here, striker safety, and move the striker forward. And now there will be an exposed hole here for the striker sleeve. And so I'm using my 1/16 inch punch and get it inside of the hole. and then compressing downward towards the barrel. As I compress downward towards the barrel, I can remove the slide cap. Going to remove the striker assembly. And as you can see here, the hole is now more visible. That is where I put the punch inside to compress it downward. As you can see in the back plate, that's where the striker sleeve goes there to keep it locked. We can set this aside. To remove the striker safety block spring, there is a pin that is holding it in place here. And so to remove that, I'm going to compress the striker safety block and then tap the slide downward. That one came out smoother, but if it's a little rougher, you can just give it a couple taps on the table and it should come out. And then now to remove the striker safety block, I'm just going to flip that upside down. Be careful to not lose the springs. The striker safety block takes 2 springs here. They are both the same and identical, so you can use them interchangeably. Going to remove those. Factory ones even got bent up a bit. Now before we install the MCARBO springs, we're going to be doing polishing on the striker safety block here and on the striker, on the contact surfaces, to really remove all of that grit and really smoothen out that pull even further. As we can see here in the firearm, as we pull the trigger, the tab comes up there and it contacts the striker safety block to remove it out of the way and compress it so that the striker may move forward. And so the contact surface is between the tab here and the striker safety block on the top side. As we can see here, you can see some wear from that tab already on the striker safety block right there. And so that's the area I really want to concentrate and polish out to make it even smoother. For the striker, the contact surface is the sear. As we see here, as I pull it down, pull the trigger, you can see the sear pulling downward. And so that striker is in contact with that sear here, under tension from the spring. And so if we polish up the firing pin on the lug, then that interaction is going to be much smoother. You can polish the striker as it is assembled, but I'm going to disassemble it just so I don't get flits and polish it all over my springs and so forth, so it's going to be easier to clean up after. So I'm bringing out the bench block. I'm using the T-shape here to hold the striker lug, just like that. And then I'm compressing downward just below the cups. So I grab the spring here and compress downward, and then removing the striker retainer cups. There's the 2 cups. Slowly releasing so the spring doesn't come flying at you. And then now to remove the striker sleeve, here it is. Just push it forward. Slides right out. Now that we have the striker by itself, we are ready for polishing. Going to unbag the polishing kit. What's nice is that it comes with everything that you need. We have a rag here to keep it clean. May get messy. Got 2 spare bits just in case you have other polish jobs that you want to get to. Let's get onto a Dremel. Okay, so I'm going to start with the striker. Put a bit on my tip. Get it onto my contact surface. I'm gonna wipe that down. Now look how nicely polished that is, and that's gonna remove all that unwanted grit inside of your trigger pull. That's really gonna be nice and smooth. That extra couple minutes, is really gonna save you in that trigger pull. Now that the striker is done, I'm gonna be doing the striker safety block and the contact surface on the top. Same process. I'm gonna get some flits, get on the contact surface too. And with this flits, you don't have to worry about removing too much material. It's just gonna be polishing. Gonna wipe that down. Look at that nice polished surface. These are the steps that's required to get that really custom feeling trigger. All right, now that we're done with polishing the upper slide components, we can set aside the Dremel for later. So now let's reassemble the striker. The sleeve goes first, and with the open cutout facing the rear, slide it through. Now the striker spring. And now I'm going to be using the same T cutout that I used for disassembly on the striker lug to be able to compress the striker spring downward and then slide the striker spring retainer cups inside. I have to get it past this portion of the striker to be able to get the cups inside. So I'm going to compress. Place 1 cup at a time. Takes a little bit of finger strength there. But now we have a polished striker lug face ready to be assembled. Now we can bring out the MCARBO trigger spring kit. Join our forearm by scanning that with your phone. It's the trigger return spring, Sear spring installation fixture, the Sear spring. I'm going to place those back in the bag as soon as I get the striker safety block springs out, and they are inside of the small bag. There's 2 striker safety block springs, and they're fully interchangeable, so the order does not matter which one. On the bottom side of the striker safety block, go to insert one, and then the other. Just like that. Now to put it back into the slide, I'm gonna have to do it upside down like this, because if I flip this over, then my springs are gonna wanna come out. So going back into the slide cutout here, and we wanna make sure the orientation is correct on the striker safety block. So this taller portion has to be facing towards the barrel. Flip this upside down. Slide it in. So again, the orientation is this taller side facing the front. Now that the striker safety block is inside of the slide, I'm going to be reinserting the pin back into the slide through this cutout here. For it to be able to fully go in, as you can see it started, is compress the striker safety block. You can shake it a little bit or give it a couple taps on the table and it is fully seated. Now we can insert the striker assembly. I like to get the striker assembly started by compressing the striker safety block and pushing it down a little bit to keep that compressed. Now to insert the back plate, you need to compress the striker sleeve here while sliding the back plate onto the grooves in the slide. You can try to do it with a punch in one hand and then try to slide it, but I like to use it just fully with the back plate. So I use the back plate to catch the sleeve here, to compress it and then slide it in. So I'm going to compress. Going to compress here and then slide. So that way I'm just using one hand to do both actions. And then you can hear a positive click once it's installed correctly. Now that the slide is finished, we can move to the lower components. This lower is the manual safety option, but the installation is going to be very similar to the ones that don't have a manual safety. I'm going to start off with the bench block, and I want to line up the center hole here with the pin using the 1/8 inch punch. Set it on there. Give it a couple taps there. That's the really great part about the bench block, is I'm not worried about scratching up my firearm on the backside, so that's why we use it all the time. Now we can remove the serialized fire control unit by lifting up on the front side. As you can see, the trigger is going to want to get stuck there. While removing the fire control unit, you want to get one finger on the slide catch lever here, and then on the back side, the trigger bar, because they're going to want to spring out as you're removing this. So I'm getting one finger on here, and one finger on here as I'm removing this. The trigger is getting caught here, so you can compress that slightly and then remove it. You can remove the takedown pin cover. To remove the safety selector, I'm gonna remove this spring here with the gunsmith shank tool. Just like that. Now remove the spring and then remove the safety. Now to remove the slide catch, you can just pull on the bar. And the spring can stay seated in there, or you can remove it. Now to the back side, the trigger bar is held on by the trigger return spring here. So I'm going to remove the trigger return spring there, and now you can remove the trigger bar. Now we have the fire control unit mostly disassembled besides the Sear and the trigger group here. We're going to move on to the trigger group. To remove the trigger from the frame, you need to remove the trigger pin here. And some used firearms, you can sit here and tap this till it comes a little bit loose here, and then get the gunsmith shank tool and remove it. But as we've seen, previously, that doesn't work for everyone, so we're going to go with the option that works for everyone. It adds a couple more steps, but it's not too difficult. So to be able to access that pin, we need to remove the safety blade, so then we can get a punch and push the pin from the bottom side. I'm going to be using the 1/16 inch punch on the bench block and removing this roll pin. Line it up on that trigger. Going to remove the trigger safety. As you can see, my roll pin didn't remove all the way, but enough just to get that trigger safety out of the way. And as you can see, there is the trigger pin from the rear side. So from the back side of the trigger on the bottom, I'm going to compress that. As you can see, as I pushed it, it came out to the top side. There's the trigger pin, and as the trigger pin was removed, the trigger return spring actually fell out. But if it didn't, then you can remove it just by pulling it out. Now we can remove it by compressing from the left side of the fire control unit the pin that's holding it. And now my takedown pin spring came out, so I'm going to set that aside. There's my trigger pivot pin, and there's the factory trigger. This fire control unit almost has nothing left here except for the Sear, which we'll get to afterwards. I'm reassembling the factory trigger just so I can set it aside, so I don't have two parts. Put the safety blade in and then punch the roll pin back in. Now we can grab the MCARBO enhanced flat trigger and do a side-by-side comparison. Now to unbox the MCARBO trigger, I have my pre-travel set screw and Allen key here and the flat trigger. So as we can see it here, side by side with the factory trigger, plating is really top notch on the MCARBO enhanced trigger. You can see the factory one kind of has like a, almost as if it's not even there, it just shines right, reflects right off. It's like a grayish color. That's a true black on the MCARBO trigger. You can tell the ejector pin marks here from the MIM on the factory trigger. We have ejector pin marks on the safety here, split lines here on the side. And so that's why that slop was really there. It's because of those tolerances in MIM and really can't have that dialed in. Also, as we can see in the MCARBO enhanced trigger, that bottom lip for easy placement, so you can get that repeatable lower leverage compared to the factory one where you don't know where you're putting your finger and you're not really maximizing that leverage. And Ruger has to make thousands and millions of firearms a year, so they have to resort to that MIM, process to keep it cheap for the end user. But for the ones that want to enhance it and get that better quality, finish, then it's an easy decision to upgrade your trigger. To begin the installation, we need to assemble the pre-travel set screw. Allen keys are already provided on the Allen key side. Place it in first, and then now I can apply Loctite to it. We use blue 242 Loctite. It is on the website, so if you want to grab it on the website while you're ordering the trigger, then you can. So I'm going to get the threads, fully cover that thread, and then I'm going to screw it in the front face of the trigger. I'm going to be screwing it in about halfway first to start, so you can go fully to feel it. That's full. I'm going to screw it back. Right about there. So about half my thread is showing, and I'm going to show how to adjust it, further or shorter once we get inside the fire control unit. Some excess blue Loctite came out with the screw as I was tightening it. I'm going to be using a microfiber cloth towel here to clean it up. Now it's ready to be assembled. Insert the trigger into the FCU from the bottom side. And then take the trigger pivot arm here and insert it through the hole from the right side of the FCU to the left. Wiggle it around there until it slides in. There it is, fully seated. Once the trigger pivot arm is installed, now we are ready for the trigger return spring to be installed. Here is the MCARBO trigger return spring, and so I'm going to be placing the hook inside in, and then the arm is going to be pointing between 4 and 5 o'clock, and then I'm going to compress it with my thumb here to push it all the way in, and then we can look through the top side and make sure it is all lined up for the trigger pin. Now I'm going to be inserting the trigger pin here. It's a little bit of a tight squeeze. Once you get it started, I wiggle it until it goes all the way in. And for the last portion, I use the shank tool. And there it is, assembled flush. And now my trigger return spring is fully captured. Before we continue, you want to function test your trigger to see if your pre-travel set screw is screwed out too far and it won't allow your firearm to reset. And so you can do this by moving the trigger rearward, and once the trigger safety blade here gets caught on the FCU, can it go forward? Yes, it can, so it will be able to reset. If your trigger pre-travel set screw is on too tight, then your trigger safety blade will be like this. And see, right there, that's the reset point. So we want to make sure at least the safety blade is getting caught, and that way we still have a little bit of pre-travel, but this is your full pre-travel now. Very short, very tactile. So you don't need to remove the trigger to adjust the pre-travel, so you can just compress the safety blade, and you can access it here with the Allen key to get shorter pre-travel, then you go clockwise, and then to gain more pre-travel, then go counterclockwise. You don't want to eliminate it all the way fully, so it just barely resets like this, right here, because then you can get it caught as you're pulling in the trigger blade. So we want to make it so it's just slightly more, and so here I could do maybe a quarter turn here to get a little bit more fully optimized to reduce it all, but that is based on preference, and so we're going to continue with this reduction in pre-travel. But this is a very critical function test to test now before you have the full firearm assembled and then find out later, so please verify your trigger here. Before we reinstall the trigger bar, we are going to be doing the Sear component, the last component of the spring kit, bringing out the bench block. Going to be lining up the Sear pivot pin here with the center hole of the bench block using a 1/16 inch punch. You usually don't even need the hammer, you can just compress it. And as you can see, my Sear is going to want to fly out here with the Sear spring, so I'm going to be keeping my finger over it as I'm removing the pieces. Pushing upward. Sear extractor, Sear, and Sear spring. And then lastly, we can remove the blocker lifter. While we have these components disassembled, we're going to be focusing on the Sear, on that contact point with the striker as we mentioned before. We're going to be polishing that contact surface. As you can see here, there's grit and carbon buildup here, so it gets really nasty, and you're going to feel that in your trigger pull. And then we're also going to be polishing the blocker lifter. As you can see, the plating already being worn here, and so that's going to be another focus point on the polishing. Clean it off. And just look how smooth that is. Wow, that is really going to show in your trigger pull right there. And now time for the blocker lifter, and we're going to be paying attention to that wear point right here where it touches the striker safety block. Get it cleaned off. Wow, that looks phenomenal. Another mirror-like polish. Now that the contact points are polished, ready to pack this polishing kit up. Now we're ready to reassemble the Sear assembly. This is truly where the installation tool really plays an effect and shows how much it assists in the installation. So with the Sear orientation, with the tab facing the left side of the firearm, going to be placing the Sear, as there's two legs here. One shorter and one has a leg. So the longer one has a leg sticking out there. So going to be placing the shorter side facing the left where the pin is sticking out, just like that into the housing. Now that we have the orientation correct on the Sear, going to be installing the installation tool to hold that Sear spring in place while we're assembling. To begin, I start with the blocker lifter. It goes on the right side, and then I take the pin to hold it in place while I get the Sear in. So going from right to left. There's the blocker lifter installed, using the pin to hold it in place while I get the Sear in. So this is the most difficult part of the installation. This tab here goes through the FCU here on the left, just like that. Once I get it started, move the pin a little bit out. Now you have to bend the Sear leg downward into the FCU as you push it and try to line it up with the pin. So we're going to do that together. I'm going to push that leg downward into the FCU, just like that, got it started. And then now I'm trying to line it up with the pin. As I push downward, trying to do it slowly, and then now I'm wiggling the pin until it lines up with that hole. Felt it get started, and it's going to push that assembly tool right out. Just like that. So that takes a little bit of practice, takes some time. So get that leg down and then push the pin through. But as you can see, without that assembly tool, I mean, it is nearly impossible. Okay, now we're ready for the extractor. So I'm going to actually take my 1/16 inch punch, move the pin slightly back. Don't go too far, otherwise it's going to pop my Sear spring out. So just enough to get the extractor right there. And then the extractor orientation, as you can see, there's a divot on the back side. It's going to go right over the hole placement there. So there's my extractor orientation, and then now I can push the pin all the way through. You may have to move the Sear around so it goes through. You can check through the back side here. Where is it being misaligned? So I actually need to lift the Sear upward. Use my shank tool and lift the Sear. There you go. Got the extractor, and now it's flush. My Sear assembly is now back all together. Now that the Sear is installed, we're going to go to the trigger bar. Going to insert the trigger bar into the hole here, and then the back tab into the housing. And then now we need to twist the trigger return spring into the location to the trigger bar there. So I'm going to just rotate that and push it down, just like that. Now I keep my thumb on this trigger bar to keep it compressed so it doesn't want to shoot out. Next we're going to insert the slide lock bar there, and then now the spring. Spring's orientation is the short leg on the top side. And then now I'm going to use the gunsmith shank tool to move the bottom leg over the slide lock bar. Just like that. I'm also going to keep a thumb over this so it doesn't shoot out on me. Now for the manual safety, goes into the back hole here. There's the orientation. Now time to insert the manual safety spring. And so to insert this, I'm going to insert the top leg here first. And then now with my left thumb, I'm pushing down on the spring leg here, and then compress in here and pop it into place there. Now that it's located on the left side, now I need to get the lever arm onto the actual manual safety. So here I'm going to use the gunsmith shank tool while my left thumb is still keeping that spring in the location. Takes a little bit of force there, you get it over. Now you can test the function. Installed correctly. Now before we put it into the grip module, we need to install the takedown lever cover here. As you can see, there's two little dimples sticking out to keep it inside of the location, but it's just free floating here. Now we're ready to install it into the module. So first insert it through the rear, slide it in there, and then do the front side. You need to compress the trigger to be able to get it inserted. Keep that slide cover there and slide it in. That cover is going to want to keep popping out, so that's why I do it in the orientation here, so that the gravity kind of holds it in place as I slide it in. Okay, now we're ready to put the pin back in. I'm going to use the bench block. Now I don't want to line it up with the hole this time because I don't want it to go through, so I'm going to put it on the solid surface. I like to use the 1/8 inch punch here. Now the grip module is fully assembled, we can reassemble the slide. Going to just slide it over. As you see there, my blocker lifter was lifted up, and so it stopped the slide from going, so make sure that's compressed downward. You don't need to rack it all the way back, you actually just need to rack it back slightly enough to put the takedown pin back in. So use my left hand here, line it up. And it slides right in place. Now I'm going to pull up the cover, and the installation is complete. Now that we have the firearm fully assembled, I want to do a couple function tests. Feel that smooth trigger pull, feel that trigger. Immediately tell right there with that finger placement, you see how much better that is. My finger is able to get in there, get to that touch point repeatedly, and wow, that feels smooth. We're gonna pull test this, but that is just so much smoother right there. No grit. Here is the reset. Still has a positive reset. Here's the pre-travel, as you can see there. That's pre-travel to the wall, solid wall, break. That is a much more comfortable feeling trigger now. Now let's get some trigger pull tests to compare to the factory. 3 pounds, 11 ounces. 3 pounds, 10 ounces. 3 pounds, 15 ounces. 3 pounds, 13 ounces. 4 pounds, 0 ounces. All right, so our 5-pull trigger average is at 3 pounds, 13 ounces. So right at 3 3/4 pounds. So that's a nice 25% to 30% trigger pull reduction to really smoothing out that pull. So in result, we have a 25% trigger pull reduction from that factory trigger pull, and that trigger pull difference can really be felt in your hand and when you're putting rounds down range. And so as you get to the wall here and feel that, you know, 5.5 pound trigger pull with the factory one, you're gonna tend to pull it just slightly down. It only takes a little bit to, you know, miss your shot here. And so that smoother, you know, lighter trigger pull is really gonna show at that target practice. Because now at the wall right here, it's going to take a little bit less force and less likely to pull that down. And so with the combination of the short stroke trigger and the trigger spring kit, that accuracy is going to be shown and improved in the range. Thanks for watching, and if you're having some trouble, feel free to give us a call or send us an email. Also be sure to check out our new support site at support.mcarbo.com.